Chief Engineer Do-hyun Kim was having a normal day on the International Space Station Harmony Vayu. He sat in the engineering control room, his feet propped up on the console while he watched the daily system diagnostics run. The clock showed 14:30 Earth Standard Time, which meant it was coffee break time. The station's gentle hum was interrupted by soft footsteps. Research Director Jae-yun Park walked in, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She handed one to Do-hyun with a smile. "Another boring day?" she asked, settling into the chair next to him. Do-hyun nodded, taking the sip of the coffee. "Just the way I like it. Boring means everything is working properly." On one of the screens, numbers scrolled past as the station's computer checked each system. Life support, normal. Temperature control, normal. Hull integrity, normal. Artificial gravity, normal. Everything was exactly as it should be. Through the control room's window, Do-hyun could see the alien scientists at work in their lab. Hae-nul Lee was carefully measuring something in a test tube, while Jin-woo Choi recorded data on a tablet. The aliens had joined the station's crew 6 months ago, and they still moved with careful precision in everything they did. "They're so serious all the time," Jae-yun said, following his gaze. "I tried to invite them to movie night yesterday, but they said they needed to triple-check their experiment setup." Do-hyun chuckled. "Well, that's just their way. They'll learn to relax eventually." A small red light started blinking on one of the diagnostic screens. Do-hyun glanced at it while taking another sip of coffee. The pressure sensor in Section 7 was showing a slight decrease. He tapped the screen with his free hand, bringing up more detailed readings. He said, more interested in his coffee than the alert. "Looks like we might have a small leak in the research wing." Jae-yun leaned forward to look at the screen. "How small?" "Small enough that we've got about 4 hours before it becomes a problem," Do-hyun replied, finishing his coffee. "I'll fix it after my break." Just then, a soft thud echoed through the station. The pressure reading dropped a bit more, and several more red lights appeared on the screen. The station's AI came to life, its calm voice filling every room. "Warning. Hull breach detected in Section 7. Emergency protocols are now in effect. All personnel please proceed to designated safety areas." Through the window, Do-hyun and Jae-yun watched as the alien scientists froze. Hae-nul nearly dropped his test tube, and Jin-woo's tablet clattered to the floor. Both aliens looked at each other in panic before rushing toward the emergency pods. "Should we tell them it's not that serious?" Jae-yun asked, finishing her own coffee. Do-hyun shook his head, standing up slowly. "They need to practice emergency protocols anyway. Makes for good training." He stretched and picked up his tool belt from its hook on the wall. "Want to help me patch the hole?" "Can't," Jae-yun said, standing as well. "I've got bacteria cultures that need checking. This is their critical growth period." "Fair enough," Do-hyun replied. He grabbed an emergency repair kit from the storage locker and headed for the door. "I'll stop by the kitchen first. Patching holes always makes me hungry." As he walked down the corridor, the AI continued its warnings, and he could hear the alien crew members rushing around in panic. The humans on board, however, simply continued their work, occasionally stepping aside to let a running alien pass by. Do-hyun made a quick stop in the kitchen, grabbed a sandwich, and finally headed toward Section 7. Just another routine day on Harmony Vayu, he thought. The only difference was that today's maintenance would have an audience of worried aliens. Maybe he could use this as a teaching opportunity. After all, space had a way of making everyone learn to take things in stride eventually. The station's AI continued its warning messages as Hae-nul and Jin-woo ran through the corridors of Harmony Vayu. Their footsteps echoed against the metal floors as they rushed toward the emergency pods, nearly colliding with walls at every turn. "This is exactly what the safety manuals warned us about," Hae-nul shouted, his breathing heavy as they ran. "Hull breaches are classified as maximum emergency level." Jin-woo, running just behind him, clutched his research tablet to his chest. We must alert the others. The human crew doesn't seem to understand the danger. They passed by the biology lab, where they saw Jia-Yun calmly checking her bacteria cultures through a microscope. She looked up and waved at them with a smile before returning to her work. The two aliens stopped running for a moment, staring in disbelief. Jia-Yun. Hey, Newell called out. The hull is breached. We're losing pressure. You must come with us to the emergency pods. Jia-Yun adjusted her microscope slightly. Oh, don't worry about that. Do-Hyun is taking care of it. Would you like to see these bacteria? They're doing something fascinating with the zero-gravity environment. The station's computer spoke again. Warning. Pressure in Section 7 continuing to decrease. Current rate, 0.8% per minute. Jin-Woo's eyes widened at the numbers. That's above critical threshold. How can she be so calm? Just then, they saw Security Officer Min-ji Kang walking down the corridor, eating a sandwich and checking something on her tablet. She nodded to them as she passed. Officer Kang. Jin-Woo called out. Shouldn't we be coordinating emergency evacuation procedures? Min-ji swallowed her bite of sandwich. Already done. Do-Hyun's handling the repair, and everyone knows where the emergency pods are if we need them. Which we won't. She took another bite. But good job on emergency response practice. Your reaction time has improved since last month's drill. Newell looked at his environmental readings device. The pressure was still dropping. According to his calculations, they had less than 4 hours of breathable air if the leak wasn't fixed. He couldn't understand why the humans weren't more concerned. But the safety protocols, he began. Our guidelines. Min-ji finished for him. Sometimes situations look worse on paper than they are in reality. Do-Hyun's been fixing leaks like this since before you joined the crew. Trust me, it's under control. The aliens watched as Min-ji continued her walk down the corridor, casually checking her tablet. Through a nearby window, they could see Earth spinning slowly below them. The thought that only a thin hull separated them from the vacuum of space made them shudder. Perhaps, Jin-Woo said slowly, we should observe how the humans handle this. For research purposes, of course. Newell nodded, though his hands were still shaking slightly. Yes, for research. We should document their emergency response methods. They began walking toward Section 7, where the breach was located. Along the way, they passed more human crew members going about their daily routines. A group of engineers was playing cards in the break room. 2 scientists were discussing their latest experiment results. A maintenance worker was humming while checking the hydroponic gardens. I don't understand. Hey, Newell said quietly. How can they all be so normal? Jin-Woo had started taking notes on his tablet. Maybe it's a cultural difference we haven't studied yet. The human response to danger seems to defy all logical patterns we've observed in other species. As they approached Section 7, they saw Do-Hyun walking ahead of them, carrying his tool belt and what appeared to be a second sandwich. He was reviewing repair schematics on a handheld device, while occasionally taking bites of his food. The aliens exchanged glances. They had come to study humans and their technology, but it seemed they still had much to learn about how humans handled emergencies, or, as the humans seemed to view it, minor inconveniences. Station Commander Yoon Seo-song was reading reports in her office when the pressure alert began. She finished reviewing the current page, marked her place, and stood up with practiced ease. The computer's warning continued to echo through the station's corridors as she made her way toward Section 7. Commander, Hey, Newell called out as she passed the observation deck. Shouldn't we be initiating emergency evacuation procedures? He and Jin-Woo had been following the situation, documenting the humans' unusual response to the crisis. Yoon Seo checked her watch. The pressure loss rate is still within manageable levels. Do-Hyun should have it fixed before dinner. She smiled at the nervous aliens. Would you like to observe the repair process? It might help you understand our protocols better. The aliens exchanged glances before nodding. They fell into step beside the commander, who maintained a steady, unhurried pace. Jinwoo was still taking notes on his tablet, his hands trembling slightly. As they walked, they encountered Security Officer Minji at an intersection. She was coordinating with the station's AI through her tablet while finishing the last bites of her sandwich. "Status report," Yoon-seo asked, stopping briefly. Minji swallowed and checked her screen. All systems responding normally except for the breach area. Do-hyun is en route with repair equipment. Most of the alien research team has gathered near the emergency pods, but all human crew members are maintaining standard operations. "Very good," Yoon-seo nodded. "Please inform our alien colleagues that while their emergency response was prompt, they can return to their workstations. This is a minor situation." Hae-Newell's eyes widened. "Minor. But Commander, according to the safety manual, any hull breach requiring immediate repair is classified as a Level 1 emergency. The manual provides guidelines," Yoon-seo explained patiently, "but practical experience often requires a different approach. Think of it like cooking. Just because a recipe says to bake something for 30 minutes doesn't mean that's always the right answer. Sometimes you need to adjust based on the situation." They reached Section 7, where several human crew members had gathered to watch the upcoming repair. They were chatting casually, some even sharing snacks they had brought along. Through the corridor's window, they could see Earth's blue curve against the blackness of space. The station's AI spoke again. "Warning. Pressure decrease continuing at 0.8% per minute. Recommended time to evacuation: 3 hours, 42 minutes. Shouldn't we at least seal off this section?" Jinwoo asked, his voice tight with concern. "That would just make it harder for Do-hyun to reach the breach," Minji explained, now working on a protein bar she had produced from her pocket. "Besides, the emergency seals would take longer to retract than the actual repair will take." More crew members arrived, both human and alien. The humans treated the gathering like an impromptu social event, while the aliens huddled together nervously, constantly checking their environmental readings devices. Commander Yoon-seo took the opportunity to turn this into a teaching moment. "You see," she addressed the alien crew, "human history is full of dangerous situations that became routine. The first submarines leaked constantly. Early aircraft often had engine troubles. The first space stations creaked and groaned with every temperature change. We learned to fix problems calmly because panic never improves a situation." "But what if something goes wrong?" Hae-Newell asked. "Then we'll handle that too," Yoon-seo replied simply. "Ah, here comes Do-hyun now." The chief engineer approached, carrying his tool belt and repair kit. He was explaining something to the alien intern Tahi, who followed him with wide, nervous eyes, taking rapid notes on a tablet. "Ready for today's lesson in practical engineering?" Do-hyun asked cheerfully, setting down his equipment. The gathered crew, human and alien alike, watched as he began to prepare for the repair. The humans chatted and joked, while the aliens watched in tense silence, about to witness how humans turned a Level 1 emergency into what they called a minor inconvenience. Do-hyun approached the breach site with his repair kit while taking the last bite of his sandwich. The gathered crew members made space for him as he set down his equipment. Tahi, the alien intern, stood nearby with a tablet ready to document the repair procedure. "First rule of space repairs," Do-hyun said, speaking to Tahi but loud enough for everyone to hear, "is to assess the situation before taking action." He pulled out a handheld scanner and began examining the hull breach. The damage was visible now. A small crater about the size of a coin where a micrometeoroid had struck the station's outer hull. The inner hull showed signs of stress, but hadn't been completely penetrated. Through the damaged section, they could hear the faint whistle of escaping air. "Fascinating," Do-hyun muttered, checking the scanner readings. "The impact pattern suggests the meteoroid was traveling at an unusual angle. This might actually help us with the repair." Hae-Newell stepped forward nervously. "The pressure is still dropping. Shouldn't we be using emergency patch foam?" Emergency foam is messy and temporary, Do-hyun replied, pulling tools from his belt. I prefer fixing things properly the first time. Tahi, please note that we're going to attempt a new repair technique today. The alien intern's hands trembled slightly as she typed. The other aliens in the crowd moved back instinctively, but the humans leaned in with interest. Are you going to try that new welding method you were talking about last week? Minji asked, starting on another protein bar. Do-hyun nodded, pulling out what looked like a small metal disc and several electronic components. The impact created a perfect crater pattern for testing it. Sometimes emergencies give us the best opportunities for innovation. Commander Yoon Seo watched with interest as Do-hyun began assembling his repair equipment. Explain the process for our alien colleagues, she suggested. It might help them understand our approach better. The traditional method would be to apply emergency sealant and then install a standard patch, Do-hyun explained while working. But I've been developing a new technique that uses the meteoroid impact pattern to create a stronger seal. The damaged metal actually helps us here. He positioned the metal disc over the breach, connecting it to a small power unit. The aliens watched in nervous fascination as he attached several sensors around the impact site. The key is to work with the damage instead of just covering it up, Do-hyun continued. Each emergency is an opportunity to learn something new. Tahi, please record that this repair will use focused electromagnetic pulses to reshape the damaged hull material. The station's AI interrupted. Warning. Pressure decrease now at 1.2% per minute. Recommended time to evacuation, 3 hours. Thank you, Do-hyun said to the AI, as if it had simply reminded him about a meeting. Now, everyone might want to step back a bit. This part could be interesting. The human crew members took a casual step backward, still watching with curiosity. The aliens retreated to what they considered a safe distance, which was nearly around the corner. Tahi remained close, though her tablet shook in her hands as she documented everything. Now, Do-hyun said, making final adjustments to his equipment, let's show you how humans turn a problem into an opportunity for improvement. He connected the power source to his device, and a soft blue glow began to emanate from the repair site. The gathered crew watched as Do-hyun began what would become known as the Kim method of hull repair, a procedure that would later be adopted as standard practice throughout human space stations. But for now, it was just another day of what humans did best, treating the impossible as merely inconvenient. The blue glow from Do-hyun's repair device lit up the corridor as he worked. Everyone watched as the damaged hull metal began to reshape itself under the electromagnetic pulses. The whistling sound of escaping air grew fainter with each passing moment. Notice how the metal is flowing back into its original position, Do-hyun explained to Tahi, who was recording every detail. The electromagnetic field helps the steel remember its original shape. It's like teaching the metal to heal itself. The station's AI spoke again. Pressure stabilizing. Current decrease rate, 0.1% per minute and falling. Excellent, Do-hyun said, adjusting some controls on his device. Now for the final step. He pressed a sequence of buttons, and the blue glow intensified briefly before fading away. The whistling sound had completely stopped. Sung Min Hwang, the alien medical officer, pushed through the crowd with a medical scanner in hand. Everyone in this section needs immediate checking for vacuum exposure symptoms, he insisted, his voice filled with professional concern. Minji finished her third protein bar of the crisis. We're fine, Sung Min. The pressure never dropped enough to cause health problems. But protocol states. Sung Min began, before Commander Yoon Seo gently interrupted him. Thank you for your concern, Doctor, she said. Perhaps you could focus on documenting this new repair technique's safety profile for future reference. Do-hyun was already packing up his tools, looking pleased with the repair. The metal disc had become perfectly integrated with the hull, creating a seal that was stronger than the original material. Tahi continued taking notes, her earlier nervousness replaced with fascination. The repair is complete, Do-hyun announced. "Tae, would you like to verify the seal integrity?" The alien intern stepped forward with a testing device, her hands now steady as she worked. The screen showed green numbers, indicating a perfect seal. "The integrity it's better than the surrounding hull material," she said with surprise. Hanul and Jinwoo moved closer to examine the repair. "This isn't in any of the emergency manuals," Jinwoo said, scanning the area with his own devices. "That's because I just invented it," Do-hyun replied with a smile. "Sometimes the best solutions come from the emergency itself." The gathered crowd began to disperse, the human crew members already discussing their dinner plans. The station's AI made one final announcement. Hull integrity restored. All systems returning to normal parameters. "Well, that was interesting," Commander Yoon-seo said. "Do-hyun, please prepare a report on this new technique. I think Starfleet Engineering will want to see this." "I'll do it after my next coffee break," Do-hyun replied, checking his watch. "Speaking of which, who wants to join me in the cafeteria? Nothing builds an appetite like a good repair job." Several human crew members agreed enthusiastically, while the alien stood in stunned silence, still processing what they had just witnessed. Sungmin clutched his medical scanner, looking torn between his duty to check for health issues and his growing understanding that the humans genuinely didn't consider this event dangerous enough to warrant medical attention. As they walked to the cafeteria, Tae fell into step beside Do-hyun. "How did you know the repair would work?" she asked, still taking notes. "I didn't," Do-hyun admitted cheerfully. "But that's the fun part of engineering. Sometimes you have to trust your understanding of the principles and try something new. Would you like me to explain how I calculated the electromagnetic pulse frequencies?" Behind them, the alien crew members watched as their colleagues walked away from what their training had told them was a life-threatening emergency, now discussing it as casually as if they had fixed a squeaky door. Slowly, they began to realize that perhaps they needed to revise their understanding of what humans considered an emergency. The station's main conference room was filled with both human and alien crew members 3 hours after the repair. Commander Yoon-seo sat at the head of the table, reviewing reports on her tablet. The alien delegation had requested an emergency meeting to discuss the day's events and review safety protocols. Do-hyun arrived last, carrying a steaming cup of instant ramen and his repair documentation. He settled into his chair as several alien crew members watched with barely concealed disbelief at his casual demeanor. "Let us begin," Commander Yoon-seo said, her tone professional but relaxed. "Chief Engineer Kim, please present your repair report." Do-hyun set down his ramen and activated the room's holographic display. Technical diagrams of his repair method appeared in the air above the table. The hull breach was approximately 2 centimeters in diameter, he began, pausing to eat some noodles. "The new repair method I developed has increased the structural integrity of the damaged section by 27%. Hanul raised his hand, speaking in a carefully controlled voice. "While the repair was successful, we must discuss the complete deviation from standard emergency protocols. The safety manual clearly states." "The manual," Min-ji interrupted gently, "was written before we had this repair technique. Sometimes reality moves faster than documentation." Jinwoo consulted his tablet, but the potential risks were enormous. The pressure drop could have accelerated. The breach could have expanded. We could have lost significant station atmosphere before reaching the emergency pods. Commander Yoon-seo nodded thoughtfully. "Those were possibilities, yes. However, our monitoring systems showed that the situation was well within manageable parameters." "Do-hyun, please share the actual risk assessment data." New diagrams appeared in the holographic display. Do-hyun pointed to various numbers with his chopsticks while explaining. "Even if the repair had failed completely, we had 3 hours and 42 minutes before critical pressure loss. The emergency pods were 4 minutes away. We maintained a safety margin of over 3 hours." The alien medical officer, Sungmin, stood up with his medical report. "Nevertheless, All personnel in Section 7 should undergo immediate health screenings. Exposure to even slightly reduced pressure can have serious effects. I appreciate your concern, Commander Yun-seo said, but our biomonitors showed no significant pressure changes in crew-occupied areas. Now let's discuss the more important matter, documenting this new repair technique for future use. Tahi, who had been quietly reviewing her notes, spoke up. The electromagnetic repair method appears to be both faster and more effective than traditional patches. Perhaps we should focus on updating our emergency procedures to include this option. The human crew members nodded approvingly at her suggestion. The aliens exchanged glances, slowly beginning to understand that human innovation often emerged from crisis situations. An excellent suggestion, Commander Yun-seo agreed. Do-hyun, would you be willing to conduct training sessions on your new technique? Do-hyun finished his ramen and smiled. Of course. Though I should mention that I've already thought of 3 ways to improve it. Nothing helps you refine a repair method like using it during an actual emergency. The alien crew members stared at him, then at their human colleagues who were nodding, as if this was the most natural thing in the world, treating a life-threatening emergency as an opportunity for technological advancement. In that case, Commander Yun-seo concluded, I suggest we schedule a series of training sessions for all engineering personnel, and perhaps we should revise our emergency manuals to include a section on improvisational repair techniques. As the meeting continued, the gulf between human and alien approaches to emergency situations became clearer, yet there was also a growing sense of understanding among the alien crew. They were beginning to see that humans didn't dismiss dangers. They simply refused to let fear prevent them from finding solutions. The evening after the hull breach incident, Jae-yun organized an informal gathering in the station's observation lounge. Large windows offered a spectacular view of Earth below, its blue oceans and white clouds creating a peaceful backdrop for the discussion. She had arranged comfortable seating and prepared refreshments, hoping to create an environment where both human and alien crew members could speak openly. I thought it might be helpful to share experiences, Jae-yun explained as crew members settled into their seats. Sometimes understanding comes easier over shared meals and conversation. The alien crew members sat together, still appearing somewhat uncertain. Hae-newell held a cup of earth tea, studying it with the same careful attention he usually reserved for his experiments. Commander Yun-seo and Do-hyun sat nearby, while Min-ji distributed snacks among the gathering. Perhaps, Jae-yun suggested, we could each share stories about how our species handles emergencies. It might help us understand each other better. Sung-min, the alien medical officer, spoke first. In our training, we learned that strict adherence to safety protocols saves lives. Every emergency procedure has been carefully designed and tested. Deviation from these protocols is considered extremely dangerous. Do-hyun nodded thoughtfully. That makes perfect sense. But human history has taught us something different. Would you like to hear about the first submarines? The aliens leaned forward with interest as Do-hyun described early human underwater vessels. He explained how these primitive craft leaked constantly, and their crews had to develop rapid repair techniques while submerged. Innovation often comes from necessity, he concluded. Those early submariners couldn't wait for perfect solutions. They had to improvise. But how did they overcome their fear? Jin-woo asked, genuinely curious. Surely they understood the dangers. Commander Yun-seo smiled. Understanding danger and being paralyzed by it are 2 different things. Humans learned early in our history that panic rarely improves a situation. Jae-yun added her own perspective. Think of it like my bacteria experiments. Sometimes unexpected problems lead to the most interesting discoveries. The key is to stay calm enough to observe and think clearly. Tahi, who had been quietly taking notes as usual, shared her observations. During today's repair, I noticed that the human crew's calm attitude actually made the situation less dangerous. There was no rushed movement, no panic-induced mistakes. The conversation continued as Earth's night side came into view through the windows. The humans shared more stories. Tales of early space exploration, emergency landings, underwater repairs, and countless other situations where staying calm had meant the difference between disaster and success. Gradually, the alien crew members began sharing their own experiences, but now viewing them through a different lens. They started to see how their focus on rigid protocols sometimes limited their ability to find creative solutions. "I think I understand now," Newell said finally. "It's not that humans ignore danger. You simply refuse to let it control your actions." "Exactly," Minji confirmed. "Fear is natural, but it's also a tool. We use it to stay alert and focused, not to become paralyzed." As the evening progressed, the distinction between human and alien crew members began to fade. They were no longer two groups discussing their differences, but colleagues sharing knowledge and experience. The conversation shifted from emergency procedures to broader discussions about problem-solving approaches and cultural perspectives on challenge and innovation. Through the windows, stars shone steadily against the black of space. The same vacuum that had threatened them earlier now provided this beautiful view, a perfect illustration of how perspective could transform even the most hostile environment into something meaningful and manageable. 1 week after the hull breach incident, life aboard the International Space Station Harmony I had settled into a new rhythm. The morning found Do-hyun in Section 7, installing permanent reinforcements around his emergency repair site. Tahi worked alongside him, no longer nervous but focused and curious. "The electromagnetic repair has maintained its integrity," Tahi reported, checking her instruments. "The reinforced area is 32% stronger than the original hull material. Our scientists are very interested in understanding how this is possible." Do-hyun smiled as he adjusted a sensor array. "Sometimes the best solutions come from necessity. Would you like to help me install the new meteoroid detection grid? I've modified it based on what we learned from last week's incident." In the nearby research laboratory, Newell and Jinwoo were conducting their experiments with a noticeably different approach. When a minor equipment malfunction occurred, instead of stopping their work to triple-check every system, they calmly identified the problem and fixed it while continuing their observations. Commander Yoon Seo noticed these changes as she made her morning station inspection. She passed by the medical bay, where Sung Min was updating the station's emergency protocols to include both the traditional cautious approach and the new adaptive methods they had learned from their human colleagues. "The combined protocols are more comprehensive," Sung Min explained when she stopped to review his work. "We maintain our safety standards while adding flexibility for unexpected situations. It is logical." In the station's cafeteria, Jae-yun sat with a mixed group of human and alien crew members. They were discussing the latest station improvements over coffee and breakfast. The conversation flowed naturally between scientific theory and practical applications, with both species contributing their perspectives. The new maintenance schedule incorporates both detailed preventive checks and space for innovative repairs, Minji explained, showing them her security updates on her tablet. "We're calling it the Harmony Protocol. It seems fitting." A small alert sounded from the station's computer. Minor pressure fluctuation detected in Section 12. Variation within normal parameters. The alien crew members glanced at their instruments but remained calm. A month ago, such an alert would have sent them rushing to emergency stations. Now they waited for more information while continuing their breakfast. Do-hyun's voice came over the comm system. "Just testing the new sensor grid. Everything's working perfectly. The system is now twice as sensitive, but won't trigger false alarms. Tahi, would you like to explain how we modified it?" Tahi's voice followed, confidently describing the technical improvements they had made. Her explanation blended traditional alien safety protocols with human adaptability in a way that showed how much both sides had learned from each other. As the day continued, the station hummed with activity. Research projects progressed, maintenance tasks were completed, and new improvements were discussed. The distinction between human and alien approaches to problems had begun to blur, replaced by a hybrid methodology that took the best from both cultures. In the evening, As another shift change approached, Commander Yunseo looked out at the stars from her office window. The station's log entry for the day was simple. All systems normal. Crew efficiency increased by 25%. New combined protocols proving highly effective. A small piece of space debris pinged off the hole near her window, once a cause for immediate concern. Now it was barely noticeable thanks to the improved hull design inspired by Do-hyun's emergency repair. The sound simply reminded her of how far they had come in understanding each other's approaches to life in space. Station log, personal edition, she recorded. The true strength of Harmony IO lies not in its reinforced hull or improved sensors, but in the combined wisdom of its crew. What we once saw as dangerous emergencies have become opportunities for growth, and perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to the stars. The ability to face the unknown with both caution and courage, turning obstacles into stepping stones for progress.